But the bottom line is the pastorate should be treated as an employee and have taxes taken out, and the housing allowance should be tax-free. End of story. They serve God. They serve the good things of mankind. They deserve a break.
We're coming up on the final chapters of the book. It's a great book. One of the final questions that a lot of readers might have is, hey, I'm actually more than a pastor. I actually have a side business. I'm a freelancer. I make money on the side. What does everything that you're saying, what does it mean for me? So in chapter 6, it's called the Bi-Vocational Pastor.
That's not what that stands for, though.
It doesn't?
No.
Tell me what it stands for.
Bi-Vocational Pastor. Now, that's a very good point that you brought up, because you guys got all sorts of wacky things going on.
Well, at least you've called it. You've called it the Bi-Vocational Pastor. You are unique and uniquely undeserved.
Yeah, you are unique, believe me. But underserved, sometimes I wonder. Yeah. Anyways.
Depends on the day.
Bi-vocational pastor means a guy with a full-time secular career job who's called by God to lead a church. He goes out and starts working at a church or leads a church, and because it's just starting out, they can't afford to pay him anything. So he might end up getting his expenses first, then maybe $1,000 a month, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000. Well, in that process, there's nobody to tell them how to pay tax on that or what to do. And in going through and running the numbers, I've actually formulated a little strategy for them where up until like 30 grand or whatever, depending on their situation, they can actually structure their lives in that small church where they don't have to pay any income tax at all on any of their ministerial income. And literally, it's just all the, do you exempt out of Social Security? Do you have a housing allowance? Do they have ministry expenses? Take care of all those things. Remember what we talked about. Not all things are taxed the same in the different parts of the compensation package. So with a bivocational pastor, we look at, can we reimburse them for their expenses? Do that. That's tax-free. Can we put in something to a 403B? Well, if they got a 401k in their real job, and they're trying to develop their pastorate into a full-time position, why not set up a 403B where they'll save more money and not have to pay tax on it? And they save income tax on the regular job, but they save income tax and Social Security tax on the 403B. So it helps them. The housing allowance, if you're exempt from Social Security, you don't pay Social Security tax, self-employment tax on the housing allowance or income tax. So the most important question for a bivocational pastor is, can you ethically answer the question that you don't want government support on your ministerial income? Because you're already in the system and you're going to get that government support. And I'm not here to tell you how to answer that question because, like we talked about before, half the people are exempt from the Social Security system because they were told to, not because they were religiously convicted against it. I don't think that rule should be there. I think as a pastor, you should have a tax-exempt housing allowance, period. And if you want the employers to pay Social Security tax on it and the pastor to have half taken out of their check, that's up to Congress and all that. But the bottom line is the pastorate should be treated as an employee and have taxes taken out, and the housing allowance should be tax-free. End of story. They serve God. They serve the good things of mankind. They deserve a break. And the way the tax structure is structured now, they aren't. And the bivocational are getting it the worst because they're getting taxed as a regular employee and getting the worst case of the taxes as a pastor.
So what's one action step that you would give a bivocational pastor to take today to help?
The biggest impact in all of it, if you have a solid retirement and you can answer that question if you are ethically okay with the fact that you're in the Social Security system, so you qualify for it based on a regular job, and say, on my ministerial income, I'm religiously opposed to getting government support, exempt out of Social Security. But if you're not, then don't. Then go after your expenses first. Your housing allowance, your 403B, those things that aren't taxed or are partially taxed to save your money. The other thing that I see in a lot of bivocational pastors, they're usually so entrenched in their church that they're big givers. Well, if you're giving 20 grand a year to your church because it's a startup church, you're making really good money, but you're called to lead it, and they're paying you $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, more, less than what you're giving. Quit giving and quit taking a salary. Why would you give something that you're probably not deducting, given what the itemized deductions and all that are now?
That's a great point.
And pay tax on something that you're giving away. So by looking at your giving, when in a bivocational setting, in a small church setting, looking at your 403B versus your 401k in your secular job, and looking at the expenses that you're incurring, your mileage, all the stuff that the church can't afford that are technically ministry expenses, and having them reimbursed by the church before they pay you. Build it. And I would build it from the expenses, the 403B, the housing, and it all depends on whether you're exempt from Social Security.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great chapter. That was also one of my favorite chapters. I think it was awesome. So if you want to find out how you could save thousands of dollars on your tax returns every year, go to taxscott.com, and him and his team will come alongside you and make sure you do.